no sound. Is it? Oh, here.
Hello, hello. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Nice. Good morning. Nice to see you all. How is everyone? Good. Okay. Are you really good, or just reasonably good, or kind of? Because you come here is to get better, right? This is kind of just the beginning. If you're good already, you're going to be really good by the time the end of this day is going to be even up. That's kind of the purpose of Buddhism. When I ask people, how are you? The best answer, is actually getting better. Yeah, because that's the purpose of the Buddhist path. So we leave the kind of dukkha aside and we get more sukha. That's kind of what we're aiming for. Is that what you're aiming for? Yeah, okay, good. Because then you're on the right place. If you're not aiming for that, if you want more dukkha, less sukha, then better go somewhere else. The pub maybe. Anyway, so welcome everyone. Are we going to start with the...
Ajahn, may we request for the 3 refuges and 5 precepts,
Fine.
please?
Okay, please. Are you going to do it officially, or just... Is that
officially.
Officially, okay,
yes.
Please. Yeah.
No. Okay. Change the slide.
Should I just start? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, all right, okay. Okay, so here we go. So just let's see what we are supposed to do.
Namo tassa.
Namo tassa. Okay, so I'll say the Namo tassa first, and then please you follow afterwards. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Dutiyampi sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi.
Tatiyampi sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Ajahn, you can say your...
Can I say my
Yeah.
special things?
Yes.
Okay, okay, good. Tissarana gamanaṃ nittitaṃ. Yeah.
Amavante.
Okay, excellent. Well done. Even if it's not there, you still know it. That's really good. Okay, excellent. Okay, so here we go, the 5 precepts. Pāṇātipātā vērāmani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Pāṇātipātā vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Ādinādāna vērāmani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Adinādāna vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Kāmesu micchāchārā vērāmani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Kāmesu micchāchārā vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Musāvādā vērāmani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Musāvādā vēramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Emani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugatiṃ yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibbutiṃ yanti tasma silang visodaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, well done, everyone. So that's the. Do you know what you have just done? This makes you a real Buddhist, right? When you take the 5 precepts, so it's wonderful. Is there anyone here who is fairly new to Buddhism, or is everyone kind of super duper know everything about the Buddhist teachings, or anyone here who hasn't been coming for that long for the Buddhist things? Everyone is kind of really. One over there. Okay, two people. Okay, all right. Okay, good. So so we're gonna. The idea with these kind of workshops is for it to be a little bit for everyone, and so that's kind of what this is going to be about. So hopefully there will be something for the newcomers, but there will also be a lot of repetition of things that you already know, and hopefully maybe a few new angles, talking about the same thing in slightly different ways. It's one of those remarkable things about the Buddha's word, is that it's often very repetitive. It's not just the monks who are repetitive. The Buddha also was very repetitive. And the idea is that when you hear the same thing from different angles, then it starts to kind of you get this overall idea of what the teaching is about. You see it from slightly different angles, think, okay, now I get it. Before the angle was slightly wrong, because we are all a little bit different. We have slightly different backgrounds, different abilities in kind of taking things on board. So this is often why repetition can be very useful. So if you think it's repetitive for you, imagine what it's like for me here. I get to hear these things all the time. So okay, so can we have the first slide up, please? Aha. Okay, so here we are. So this is the name of the workshop today, the Gatekeeper's workshop. And as you will see, this is it's not just the gatekeeper, it's the gatekeeper in early Buddhism, not just any old gatekeeper. It's a very specific kind of gatekeeper. And this is like almost like a copyrighted term, early Buddhism, early Buddhist texts. And this is the idea behind this is a kind of a word we have been using at the Dhammaloka Centre, Buddhist Center WA in Perth for about 10 years now. And we had all of these workshops, all called early Buddhism workshops. And just to remind you why this is so important, why this matters. So the idea behind early Buddhism workshop is that basically to go back to the word of the Buddha. What did the Buddha teach? One of the things that you find in the Buddhist world is a lot of emphasis on all kinds of teachers. Teacher A, teacher B, teacher C. And often they disagree with each other, and you get really confused after a while if you listen to A, because A say X, teacher B says negative X. And you think, wait a minute, how do I make this work out, right? One is the opposite of the other one. And so very often the best way to really get a good grasp of what Buddhism is about is to go back to the Buddha. Because without the Buddha, there is no Buddhism. Without the Buddha, everything else in Buddhism doesn't make any sense. It all makes sense because of the Buddha. So when you have an idea of what the Buddha taught, you're getting kind of the gold standard, the thing that everyone else has to refer back to. So these are the teachings that really are, are kind of the core of what we want to bring across. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of using the word of the Buddha, which to me was very powerful and important, was I realized very early on that specific teachers, they have their idea or their angle on Buddhism. So I went to Perth very early on, and it's kind of an extraordinary story. The way I ended up in Perth, because I'm not from Australia originally, I'm from Norway originally, very different, right? Norway, cold, icy, people, very cool people. People don't talk to you very easily in Norway. Australia is like warm and kind of, and hot. And I don't know if you've been to Australia. It's kind of, if you think Singapore is warm, come to Australia in the summer. Anyway. And so very different people, very different climate and very things. So how did I end up in Australia? Well, the reason was because I heard a talk by Ajahn Brahm, and I kind of read something about him, and I thought, yeah, that's my teacher. And so I grabbed the telephone, I called up, can talk to Ajahn Brahm, please? Yeah, Ajahn Brahm here. Can I come to Australia? Okay, you can come. Okay, so I went to Australia. That was pretty much how it happened. And I've been to Australia ever since. So I kind of found my teacher straight away. But even though I did find my teacher, and even though I'm very happy I went to Australia, what was interesting to me was that Ajahn Brahm had a specific approach to the whole path. And Ajahn Brahm's approach is a bit like this. You sit down, close your eyes, make sure you're comfortable, and you just wait. And then after you wait for a while, bang, you go into samadhi, you go into deep meditation. That's Ajahn Brahm's approach to kind of the Buddhist path. And I tried this. And I was sitting there and doing nothing, and my mind going all over the place, thinking about all the things I should not be thinking about. I'm not going to tell you what those things are. A bit too embarrassing for me if I mention all those things. And I realized that, everyone has their approach. And then I decided, because Ajahn Brahm, one of the great things about Ajahn Brahm, he also was interested in the suttas, in the word of the Buddha. The suttas are the word of the Buddha. And because of that, I started reading the suttas. And then it opened up my eyes to this world of information about what Dhamma really is about. And I realized that the way Ajahn Brahm was teaching, it fitted with the suttas, but it was only a small amount of what actually is available in the suttas. The suttas actually bring in much more. And this is the genius of the Buddha. The genius of the Buddha is that he really has this broad outlook, and it's for everyone. It is not just for those who are already super-duper meditators like Ajahn Brahm. You just chillax and bang, samadhi happens. It's for ordinary people as well. And I realized I was much more ordinary than Ajahn Brahm. So it opened up this whole view of the Buddhist world. And there is no teacher who actually is able to teach the Dhamma in such a broad, all-encompassing way that includes everyone as the Buddha. The Buddha is like this, he's like a spiritual genius. And the more you read the suttas, the more you understand how special the Buddha is in delivering the message of the Dhamma. This is kind of the marvelous thing about the Buddha. And so this is kind of one thing that really stood out for me about the Buddha's teaching. Everything is there. And no matter how kind of basic you are and how kind of dodgy you are as a person, you find the instructions that you need in those suttas. So that was one of the things. The other thing which I found interesting about the suttas is that they have all the basics there, but the other thing is that they are also very clear in a way. It's kind of interesting because I often hear people say, you go to the modern teachers because they are much more inspiring. It's easy to read. You get nice verse, and they have lots of jokes. At least some of them have, and stories and all of these kind of things. And these things are all important, and they matter, and they make the Dhamma come alive in a certain way. Stories are things that we remember, so they're very, very useful. So I love the stories myself, and often if you listen carefully, you find a lot of very interesting Dhamma in those stories. Never just laugh at the stories, Listen deeply, because there's a message there as well. But I also realized that actually, if you want to really understand what the Dhamma is about, the Buddha is much more clear. You may think the Buddhist teaching are boring. First time you open up the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length sayings, the first discourse, they call the root of everything. And you start reading, after reading one page, and you cannot understand a word of this. So this is kind of really gobbledygook. And maybe you get put off the suttas forever because of that. So I think it's a bad idea to start the collection with that sutta. Who is responsible for that? Putting that sutta first. I don't. And it's interesting who is responsible. Actually, it's an interesting point. It's not the Buddha who is responsible for that, because the Buddha, he just taught all kinds of stuff, and then some dodgy and I shouldn't say dodges, some monk probably put this together and called it the middle-length sayings, and they put this sutta first. And of course, there was an idea behind that. The idea is that we put the kind of right view sutta, for this is all about right view, thinking about the world in the right way. And then the path kind of emerges from right view, because the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. The only problem is that, if you are an ordinary person, you kind of give up straight away because it's too difficult to understand. So maybe that wasn't the best idea. But anyway, who am I to say? It's just my opinion here. But the word of the Buddha is very systematic. It is very coherent. It fits together in a beautiful way. The way I like to think of the Dhamma is like a jigsaw puzzle. So there's all these little pieces, but they fit together, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, and it creates this big picture. And the big picture that we see when you put it all together, that's the picture that the Buddha saw on his night of awakening. On his night of awakening, it was like, wow, this is it. It's like one insight. But then to articulate that insight, to express it in words, actually is very difficult. I don't know, you can imagine if you have some nice meditation experience and then you have to explain what it was afterwards, and you say, it's hard to explain, it just felt nice, that's all I know. And that's not enough to kind of express what's going on if you just say it feels nice. So the Buddha has this ability to express this profound insight into reality in words, in a way that is systematic, that actually once you start to understand how it works, it is very easy to follow, because it is one picture. All the pieces kind of fit together somehow. Noble Eightfold Path, 7 factors of awakening, the 5 spiritual faculties, the 5 khandhas, the 5 nivaranas, the 12 factors of dependent origination, the 108 kind of feelings, the 84,000 Dhamma teachings, Chatura Siti Sahasa Dhamma Kanda. This is the Pali for that. I'm just saying a few Pali words just to impress you, so you kind of... Is anyone here knows Pali? Where are the Pali scholars here? No, okay. I can say whatever I want. No, whatever. I'm still going to sound very impressive. Okay. So this is the Buddha's teaching. Is very it really is clear, and you may find that if you actually read contemporary teachers, and please do so. I mean, I guess I'm a contemporary teacher. Yes, I would be hypocritical if I said don't listen to contemporary teachers. But when you start listening to them, you start to understand, actually, they're not that coherent. They're not that easy to understand. If you try to pin down what they're talking about, actually, often you don't really know. Sounds nice on the surface, but if you really try to understand what it is, actually don't understand what it is. Or it is very general, so you can kind of read whatever you want into it. And this is a problem. So this is why when I usually teach from the suttas, from the word of the Buddha, because I think that is the gold standard. That is what we always have to come back to. And this is also why today we're going to look at this idea of the gatekeeper from the perspective of the early suttas. So is everyone okay with that? If anyone not okay with that? If you're not okay with it, then you may have been in the wrong place again. So, let's see where this gets us. I'm going to summarize. I'm not so super organized today because I just came from a retreat in 𝐵𝑟𝑎ℎ𝑚. I hasn't really had much time to think about today's workshop, but I have a few kind of points that I have kind of whacked together early this morning. I thought, okay, I'm going to have to talk about this and that. So I had a thought about it yesterday and a bit this morning, and that's really it. But I think, I'm pretty used to teaching now, so hopefully be all right. Gatekeeper. Okay, so we're going to talk about the gatekeeper. And there's 4 areas in particular I want to touch on about the gatekeeper. So first of all, what is the gatekeeper? What do we mean by this idea? And so the gatekeeper really is just the idea of mindfulness. It is a mindfulness that actually is at the gate. So what is the gate? And there's a couple of different ways of thinking about this idea of gate. A gate is like an entry point, right? That's kind of the idea of a gate. The gate to a house, the gate to a garden, the gate to whatever is an entry point. And of course, in Buddhism, there is 5 main, actually 6 really, but let's call it 5 main entry points to start with. And that is the 5 senses. Yeah, there's like this, it's through the senses that we contact the world. How do I know that there are people here today? Because I can see you and I can hear you, and I can't smell you, fortunately. But, I know maybe you can smell me, because I've been doing these walks and I've been drenched in sweat, and I haven't washed. I've had a shower, but I haven't actually washed my clothes, so don't come too close to me here. This is the way I don't get COVID as well, right? That's kind of a smart trick. Yeah. So, but this is the gateway. We know the world through the senses. 5 senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Yeah, the 5 senses in the world. And this is how. So this is how kind of the external world kind of becomes part of us, who we are. Yeah, we kind of get mixed up with the external world there. And so these are the gates in a sense. And then there is the mind. The mind is also called the gate in Buddhism, which is a little bit more difficult to understand, because it's not really a gate to the external world, but it is a gate to the inner world. Yeah, we know the inner world, or we know ideas through the mind. So in that sense, it is also a gate, even though in a slightly different way from the 5 external senses. So these are the gates. So the idea then of the gatekeeper is the one which is alert at that gate. Yeah, you see what happens when you see something. How does your mind react? And you then try to make sure that you don't get the bad things from the external world, that you react to the external world in such a way it doesn't give rise to all kind of negative consequences. Yeah, so you keep that gate. You're the guard at the gate. You know what's going on, and that guarding is what enables you to react to that world in a skillful way. So much in Buddhism is about being skillful, yeah, being wise about these things. So this is the idea of the gatekeeper. You watch what you see, what you hear, yeah, and you have some idea what's going on when you interact with the world. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're going to go into much more detail about this very soon. And it's important, one of the things I want to maybe should say right away, it's important not to take this too seriously, or take it seriously, but don't take it the wrong way here. And one of the things that I often found when I speak to lay people, sometimes monastics, they speak to lay people as if everyone is a monastic, right? They give them this teaching, say, okay, be like this, don't enjoy your food, right? Really going to be, and actually even monastics enjoy their food, so that's kind of being hypocritical anyway. So enjoy your food. One of the things I liked about Ajahn Brahmali, when I got to the monastery, he said, enjoy your food. And Bodhidharma Monastery has the best food anyway, right? So it's a really good idea to enjoy your food. So you come to Bodhidharma Monastery, they say it's the best restaurant in Perth. That's Bodhidharma Monastery here. And it's free as well, right? So it has lots of advantages. Has many people here been to Bodhidharma Monastery? I know some of you have, yeah? Okay, so if you want good food, Singapore is pretty good, I have to admit, but Bodhidharma also pretty good. So, but don't go there for the food, right? I'm kind of leading you astray now. So, the idea here is that there is a difference between monastic life and lay life, and I think it's important. I want to make that point at the outset, because sometimes we teach these things we call the gatekeeper, which includes sense restraint of the senses. We teach it in too high a level, and what tends to happen is that Buddhism becomes like this dry, terrible religion, and everyone converts to Christianity because Christianity is so much fun, right? Everyone is friendly, goes singing in the church, and everyone goes, you have a good time. And whereas Buddhism is kind of this dry, terrible thing. But it shouldn't be like that. Buddhism should be fun. You know, one of the things about the Buddhist path, which is so obvious when you start to read the word of the Buddha, is its happiness through and through and through. And the happiness you get on the Buddhist path is much more interesting, much more profound than you get in these kind of happy, clappy churches or whatever. This is real, deep happiness. The potential is so enormous. I'm not saying that there is no happiness in Christianity. There is. And in Christianity too, there are some very interesting sages going back in the past. But if there is one place where you find this expressed and taught in a very direct and immediate way, it is on the Buddhist path. The Buddhist path is really extraordinary in this sense. So it is important that as Buddhist lay people, don't think you are monks. Enjoy your life. Don't go too far. Don't be afraid of, part of ordinary life is to enjoy a bit of entertainment, is to enjoy your food, is to enjoy relationships. That's part of the ordinary world. There is 5 precepts to guide you. As long as you stay within those 5 precepts, you are okay. That should be your guide in lay life. So remember that, because otherwise we can become really miserable as lay people. It's okay to come back home after a long day and put on a bit of music. It's fine. And then you relax with the music, and then once you feel nice and relaxed, let go of the stress, then you can maybe do some meditation later on. But remember to be balanced in these kind of things. Otherwise we kind of destroy the whole purpose of the Dhamma, and we get things the right way here. If you can live with kindness, that is really what matters in this world. And I think then, if we think like this, we can actually maybe re-establish a bit of the popularity of Buddhism. I'm always I'm actually not concerned at all, but people here in Singapore are concerned, everyone is converting to Christianity here. Everyone is becoming Christians, and what are we going to do about it? Buddhism only 7%. Someone said that to me recently at the retreat in Batam. 7% of the world's population. Maybe we need to be more Buddhist. And I don't think it matters really how many Buddhists we are personally. That's kind of, to me, irrelevant. But what we should do, we should present the message of the Buddha in such a way that it is attractive to people, because it has enormous potential to give people so much happiness and benefit. So it is important that we present it in the right way. So remember this, enjoy your life. Enjoy your life responsibly. Don't make it dry and destructive, and then it's okay. Are you leaving already? Okay, you're going over there, okay. I thought maybe you thought too much happiness, we want the dry path or something like that. All right, so I'm going to now lead by example. I'm going to have some nice drinks. So monks are always supposed to lead by example. Actually, not always, sometimes. Okay, so that is just briefly about understanding these teachings in the right way, and don't overdo it and become a dry Buddhist, boring, terrible Buddhist. So this is the gatekeeper. So the gates, 6 senses, the keeper is mindfulness, and so that's kind of basically what this is about. But there's another way of thinking about the gatekeeper, which in some ways is maybe more relevant for the majority of people. Because the gatekeeper of the 6 senses is actually very refined, and it's difficult to do that fully unless your mindfulness is extremely strong. You can do it to some extent, but not fully, because actually it's very hard to do this fully. But there is another gatekeeper which in many ways is more interesting. And that is the gatekeeper of the 3 kinds of actions. There's another way it is used in the suttas. So this gatekeeper we have just looked at now, the 5 senses, that is the world coming into us, in a sense. But there's also the way that we react to the world. It's we going out into the world, right? When we speak, we have an impact on others. When we act, we impact other people around us. When we think, also, we have an effect on the world around us. This is like a different gatekeeper. This is the gatekeeper that guards what goes out from the gate. The other one is going in through the gate into the kind of house of a person, but it's also leaving the house, going the gate into the world. And in many ways, this is more important because it is more fundamental. This has to do with how we speak in life, how we act towards other people, and also how we think to the world around us. So we stand at the gate and we ensure that we live in a good way towards the world around us. And this is very, very practical, because every one of you will have to interact with people every day of your life pretty much, except when you go on the super-duper silent retreat. And even though 𝐼𝐿𝐼 told me that the retreat in Batam was supposed to be noble silence, I didn't see all that much noble silence there. But sometimes you go on a very silent retreat, and sometimes if you come to Jhana Grove retreats, most of those are fairly silent, yeah? And that is when you don't speak so much. But otherwise, we speak pretty much every day here. We interact with people every day. And even if you don't speak with people, there is that attention, how you deal with them. Yeah, your body language is kind of obvious whether you are coming from friendliness or not, right? And if you don't speak, sometimes you get grumpy because you can't speak, so your body language becomes worse. So we try to keep that good body language as well. And this is a very, very important part of how we deal with the world, because it is very fundamental and very basic. So this is the second aspect of the gatekeeper here. Keeping mindfulness of how we live, how we speak, how we act, and how we think about the world around us. So this is the idea of what the gatekeeper is. Does that make sense to everyone? Please feel free. This is like a workshop, so you can be pretty relaxed. Yeah, if you want to, say something, or you want to disagree, or if you want to complain. No, not too many complaints. Let's leave those to one side, at least to the very end, so we don't kind of. Is everyone okay so far? Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. So let's move on to the next one. Why does the gatekeeper matter? Yeah. What is this all about? And the reason why it matters is, well, first of all, it matters, as you have just seen, talking about the idea of acting by body and speech. This has to do with morality. Yeah, to be able to be moral, to live well with people around you, you need a gatekeeper that actually knows what's going on. But it also matters because morality in Buddhism is actually very profound. Morality in Buddhism is not just about how we speak and how we act towards other people. It has to do with how we think about the world. And this is a very refined kind of morality. I think Buddhism is the only teaching in the world that teaches this kind of morality. But it is about how we deal with the world around us. And if you look at the Noble Eightfold Path, it starts off with right view, right intention, and then you have the factors of morality, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and then the fourth one, which is right effort. Everyone heard about right effort? What about the beginners? Have you heard about right effort? Yeah? Okay, good. So you're already quite reasonably educated then. You know about right effort. So this gatekeeping business is really, a lot of that is about right effort. It is about the ability to effort is like the mental effort that we use, how we're dealing with the world. That is factor number 6 on the Buddhist path. It is part of morality. So this is like the broad idea of sila. It is known in the Pali as the Indriya Sangvara sila, the morality that has to do with the restraint of the indriyas, which are the 5 or 6 senses. So it is factor number 6, and factor number 6 is the factor that leads to meditation practice. So if you want to have some success in meditation, and if you want to really go down that path, and I can tell you that if you want to do something which is really, really worthwhile in life, something that is going to revolutionize and transform your entire attitude to what it means to be a human being, then meditation is really what that is about. Because meditation has the ability to show you aspects of the world, aspects of life that are completely beyond what you normally understand. This is why meditation and these things are sometimes called, what is it called again? It's called like mysticism, because they are states outside of our normal reality. And they are states of awareness, states of energy, states of bliss, states of peace. It's completely unimaginable for an ordinary human being. This is why it is so interesting, and this is why it adds a dimension to the very meaning of life. Yeah, this is really about the meaning of life, and this is what people don't get sometimes. Yeah, it's something which is about the meaning of life is obviously extremely interesting because everyone is kind of struggling to find what the meaning of life is. Yeah, this is kind of most people, they kind of go through the motions of the ordinary life. Yeah, you get born, you're a child, you go to school, you study, your parents, they study hard, then you get more options. Yeah, you can choose between being a lawyer and a doctor. Big deal, right? Whether you're a lawyer or doctor. Anyway, that's what you kind of, they say, this is important. It gives you those options. Okay, monk and doctor. Okay, I agree, that's a big difference. But lawyer and doctor, no, I don't think that. Anyway, I'm biased. So, so with this, we go through the motions, and we work really, really hard, yeah, and our company says if you work hard, you get the promotion, you get better salary, and then you kind of go through that, and then you retire, right? And then you start to wonder, okay, I was working really hard for all those, and now I'm retired, so now I kind of, and that's when you start coming to the Buddhist Fellowship. Actually, I'm glad to see that there are people here who are not all retirees. That's really positive, actually. You get it before you are old, right? When you're old, it's kind of obvious. But if you get it while you're still kind of in your 30s, yeah, even better in your 20s, wow, that's really cool. And that's really, really wonderful. Or even in your 40s, yeah. But if you only get it in your 70s or 80s, then sometimes it's still good, but it doesn't have the same ability to transform you. So the idea is that this is a very interesting and profound path, the idea of meditation. And to access that meditation, to enable that to really work, the sixth factor, right effort, is fundamental to make it work. And the sixth factor is all about what we're doing today. Yeah? It is about the gatekeeper. It's about dealing with the senses, dealing with how we live in the world. That is why it is interesting, yeah? Because actually this is where the access becomes. And for that reason, you can imagine that also it's going to be quite challenging. To live with this gatekeeper in a sustained way, to really do it properly, actually is very challenging. And so today I'm going to show you how to make this actually work. Yeah? And right, so this is why it matters so much. So next one, how does it arise, right? How do we make it work? That's what I was just saying. So this is really what the main idea behind the workshop today is. And very often, we're talking about mindfulness now, and we have the mindfulness movement going around the world. And I'm going to tell you the truth, most of that mindfulness movement is Mickey Mouse mindfulness. It is good, right? I should not kind of deprecate it too much. It is good. Yeah, mindfulness is always going to be good, and it does have a beneficial effect on people. But the problem is with the mindfulness movement is that it has been taken out of context. And in fact, this was the very purpose of the mindfulness movement. It was started by a fellow called Jon Kabat-Zinn in the US. He was a medical doctor and very far-sighted in many, many different ways. But he realized that if you're going to make the mindfulness work in our modern society, especially in a place like the United States, or maybe in Europe, Europe actually is even more difficult than the US. Europe is like a desert, a spiritual desert. Sometimes I despair when I go back to Europe. I think people here are just really kind of, they're only concerned about material things. I'm not saying European people are bad. Actually, there are lots of good people there, like everywhere, but they need education. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do. But so you have to, the idea was we need to secularize Buddhism to make it acceptable in the West. In Singapore, Buddhism is quite acceptable because it is a large part of the population here is at least Buddhism in name at the very least, which is already helpful because you're leaning in the right direction. But in the West, more easy to make it acceptable if it has a secular idea. But once you make it secular, what you do is you take out this one aspect of mindfulness, you take it out of context, and you say, practice this one aspect. And that is a very big shortcoming on that path, because without the supporting factors, actually mindfulness is very weak. Mindfulness becomes powerful only if it is supported by these other factors. And that's why I've just been talking about all the factors leading up to mindfulness, yeah? And one of the most important ones is actually the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is not really mindfulness yet. We're using a preliminary kind of mindfulness to get to the mindfulness that does meditation practice. So when I say that the gatekeeper is all about mindfulness, it's true. But it is a preliminary kind of mindfulness. And the real mindfulness really only comes with meditation practice. So you need the kind of various degrees of mindfulness building us up. And then we get to the real meditation. And so the secular mindfulness has a very big shortcomings. And they are learning about this, which is good. I've seen that they have become more interested in morality recently, in ethics, because they're starting to understand that, well, actually, it has very limited effect unless you bring ethics into it, which is good, and I'm really happy about that. But there is even more to it than that. So one of the things that kind of arises out of this secular idea of mindfulness is that mindfulness begets mindfulness. If you are mindful, then you become more mindful as a consequence. Is that true? A little bit true, yeah? Tiny bit true. It's not entirely, utterly, completely wrong view or wrong. There's a little bit of truth to it, because if you try to be mindful, of course, you're going to be more mindful. But really, that is not how the Buddha describes mindfulness. He doesn't say, be mindful, you get more mindful. Well, he does, to some extent. If you are already in meditation, yes, then mindfulness brings more mindfulness. But the initial arising of mindfulness that enables meditation to happen does not really happen just by trying to be mindful. In fact, trying to be mindful, if you try it too hard, it just makes you tense. Yeah, be mindful, be mindful. And after a while, you can't really relax. Yeah, you can't enjoy again. So in the suttas, the way that mindfulness is described, there's two things that are the supporting factors for mindfulness. And one of those things is virtue, sila, yeah, the goodness of your heart, if you like, the kindness, all of these kind of things. That is one side. Why does virtue matter so much for sila? And one of the reasons is because if you are virtuous, you're going to feel good about yourself. If you feel good about yourself, you're going to want to be here. If you feel bad about yourself, you're going to want to be in the future and the past. You're going to want to be in your fantasy world. You don't want to be here. If you feel good about yourself because you know that you live well, then mindfulness will arise. So this is one factor, one very important factor for the idea of how mindfulness comes about. How does it arise? That's what it says there. Oh, my eyesight is getting terrible. I can barely see anything without glasses these days. I can see a blur, but that's not very helpful. So, that's one side. But another side, which is very interesting here, another supporting factor for mindfulness. Do you know what it is? Some of you know. I know some of you know, but so this is interesting, right? What is it? And the reason I stop like this and ask you what it is, because if I just go and say it straight away, you won't remember. But if I say, hold on, wait, this is interesting, and actually it is very interesting, right? So we really want to remember these kind of things. What is the other side? Okay, we already know, in a sense, that virtue and kindness has to be the supporting factor for mindfulness. But there's another one, and you see it in the suttas. If you have read the suttas, you would know. At least if you have read the right suttas. You have to have this broad knowledge. That's the problem sometimes. But actually, the Noble Eightfold Path gives it away. Yeah, because the Noble Eightfold Path starts with right view, right? So that tells you that right view is going to be a very important supporting factor for mindfulness. So these are the two things that you need to focus on if you want to be mindful. Kindness and right view. Yeah, these are the two areas that actually are really important. And I'm going to show you how that works as we go through this workshop. What is it about right view that actually it drives the idea of mindfulness and actually makes us more mindful? It's not obvious, right? But this is actually very interesting here. And how do we get that right view? Well, one of the most important ways of getting right view is to listen to the word of the Buddha, yeah? To get the brainwashing of the Buddha. Yeah. it's a beautiful idea, this idea of brainwashing, because initially you think it's crazy. I'm not here to be brainwashed. I'm a free thinker here. Yeah, that's what people say to me. Oh yeah, I don't really believe in Buddhism. I'm a free thinker here. There are no free thinkers. They don't exist. It's a conceit to think that you are a free thinker. Why? Because all thinking is conditioned. And because all thinking is conditioned, everyone is brainwashed already. You just have to choose your brainwashing. That's really the only option you have. So choose the good brainwashing. Yeah. So that is the idea. So we're going to look in quite a bit. I want to look at the idea of right view, hopefully a little bit on this workshop, because I think it matters enormously here. But now it is already 10 o'clock, so Eiling, I don't really have the schedule entirely in my head. It's over here. Okay, excellent. So I think 10 o'clock is first break. So let's have a short break. So this is just to give everyone a chance to stretch your legs, and if you need to use the toilet or whatever, you have an opportunity. If you need a cup of coffee, you also have an opportunity. All right, everyone. Let us carry on. And we're just talking about how the gatekeeper arises, how the mindfulness arises. And the point I was trying to make is that it is quite different from a muscle. Yeah, if you want to make a muscle strong, you have to use it. You have to lift weights. You have to do all kind of things, and the muscle becomes strong by usage. And usage is the way to make a muscle strong. But mindfulness doesn't necessarily come strong by usage. Mindfulness becomes strong by putting in the causes, the right causes. Yeah, so it is a conditioned process. And it's interesting, everything in Buddhism is really based on this idea of conditionality. Yeah, this is kind of a core aspect of Buddhism. Everything exists because of causes and conditions, and then it arises as a consequence. And this has to do with the very fundamental Buddhist idea of non-self. The idea of non-self is that there is nothing that inherently exists on its own, for its own reasons. Things always exist as a consequence of other things. And this means that everything that we do, everything that exists basically, depends on cause and conditions. What is everything that exists? Well, everything that exists is really our experience. In Buddhism, experience is everything here. Because outside of experience, well, you have no idea what it is. So experience is everything. And within experience, it all depends on cause and conditions. So mindfulness is part of experience. So that too depends on cause and conditions. So this is a very important point. So it's not like a muscle. A muscle develops by usage. Mindfulness is more dependent on other cause and conditions. You could argue that usage is a cause and condition, but that is not the one that is actually required here. It's a different kind of cause and condition. So let's move on to the next point. So please feel free to raise your hand at any point, and if there's anything you want to ask about, so we can. Okay, so how do we make this work, the gatekeeper? So this you can see here is kind of sequential. There's a kind of a system to the madness here, and so how do we actually make the gatekeeper work? So we are mindful, we are aware of what is going on, we can see our senses, we can see our own reactions to the senses, with things coming into us, and we can see how we are reacting to the world, how we are kind of inputting things back into the world through our speech and actions. So we have that awareness, but then from that awareness to doing things in the right way, what do we have to do? Let's say that you see something, and that thing that you see has an effect on you. One of the things that has the most effect on us are other people, right? Other people have two effects. Either we like them, and we say, wonderful, let me give you a hug, or we don't like them, please stay away. That's kind of the two responses we have to other people. Actually, often we are kind of neutral as well. So how do we deal with that input? When you see someone and you kind of see this, either you're attracted or you are repelled by what you see. And there's two kind of, core ways that we tend to deal with this. And one of them is using willpower, right? This is kind of the classical way that we deal with almost everything here. Okay, I'm getting angry. How do I get rid of the anger? I just use willpower to kind of suppress it. This is the normal way that most people deal with the issues. It's not appropriate to get angry, so I got to suppress it somehow. But this is not the ideal way from a Buddhist point of view. And it's kind of obvious once you start to understand why this isn't right, or why it doesn't really work. And the reason is that if we use willpower to control our emotions or whatever, then first of all, willpower, one of the problems, it depletes our energy. When you use willpower, you go to work all day and you try to control your mind, and you have to work really hard, you have to write an essay, or you have to read something. That willpower that you have to put into it means you get tired. Come to the end of your day and you are exhausted, and you kind of just collapse when you come back home, at least for a while, okay, and then you get up again. But this is often the case for people, they get very exhausted when they have to work, and especially if we don't enjoy the work 100%. Do you always enjoy your work 100%? Not always, right? If you enjoyed it 100%, very easy to focus because, yay, my work. But all work has some degree of displeasure to it. That's when you have to use willpower. So it tires you out if you use willpower. This is one problem. But the second problem, so what that means that you can only sustain it for so long, and then when you can't sustain it again, well, and then all of these problems come back to you. This is the first thing. The second thing about willpower, it's actually quite weak. It doesn't really, sometimes it overcomes the problem, but very often it doesn't. It holds the problem in check. It holds it in check for a while, and then when your willpower is depleted, or you're fed up with willpower or whatever it is, bang, it comes back to you again. Keep the ill will in check, and then as soon as the willpower is used up, it erupts again. And sometimes it erupts with a kind of violence, a bit like holding a lid down. You have a boiling kettle. Have you ever tried to hold the lid down on a boiling kettle? It's like, it doesn't take long before it kind of explodes, right? And it really comes out. And that sometimes can also happen with our emotions if we try to keep them in check, because actually there's something underneath going on that makes it worse sometimes if we try to control it. So even though willpower, sometimes it works, it can sometimes be useful, a lot of the time it is not really the ideal way of overcoming our problems. So what then is the ideal way here? And the ideal way is what I always learn from Ajahn Brahmali, wisdom power. Wisdom power is the path to make this work. And very interesting, it's one of the things I always enjoy about reading the suttas is always to compare it to what Ajahn Brahmali says, So I will listen to Ajahn and I go to Ajahn, I will say, Ajahn, does this match with the suttas, what you're saying here? And then he gets really fed up with me after a while, kind of. I used to do, especially in the early days when I was kind of a young whippersnapper of a monk, I used to do this more. These days I don't do it so much anymore, but I was probably very annoying in the early days. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of being annoying, actually. So he says, using wisdom power, and actually he is right, because that is exactly how the suttas also describe how to overcome these negative qualities of the mind. It's very interesting here. And when I see that connection between the way your teacher teaches and the way the Buddha teaches, it becomes extra powerful. And so we use wisdom power. We learn how to reflect in the right way, how to look at other people in the right way, how to think about the world in the right way. And as we do that, it's almost becomes second nature, that we don't get upset so easily, that we don't get attracted to kind of the wrong things in the world so easily. It becomes second nature because we know deep down what actually works. And now you can start to see what I was saying before, that the idea of right view is so important, for this whole process. Because right view is really nothing but the idea of reflecting in the right way. If you have right view, then of course the reflection follows the view. It's one of those things that you find in the sutta, something called the vipalasas. Vipalasas means like distortions of the mind. And according to these vipalasas, how we view things affects how we perceive the world. How we perceive the world affects how we think about the world. How we think about the world affects our views. So it's kind of this cycle, So how we think depends on our views. So if we can change our views, if we can accept some of the brainwashing from the Buddha, then gradually we also learn how to use wisdom power in dealing with the world around us. So this is one of the things I will show you later on. Hopefully, we'll see how far we get. There's always more material than there is time, but anyway, we'll see how things go. And then we will, I'll show you how this actually works in practice. So this is the idea behind all of this. So I have come to my last point already, point number 4. That was really all I had to say today. So thank you very much. No, I'm just messing around. I have much more to say. You'll be surprised how much I have to say. So any questions so far about this? Aha, okay, of course that's how it works. Yeah. Okay, good, so we'll carry on. So I don't have any more slides because I'm not really all that. So how do I stop the slideshow now? What do I have to do? Someone has got this starting, or get it, just go like that. Okay, there we are. Well, that's pretty neat. Okay. It's not showing on the screen. How do we make it show on the? How do we make my screen show on the main screen here?
You want to stop the slide? Or?
How do I stop the slides?
No, we stop it here.
You stop it there. Okay, just show my screen. Just show the screen as it is. Yeah. Now it's showing nothing at all, but it was showing me a second ago. Yeah. This is actually the best one. Emptiness showing. That's kind of really cool. So now it's Yeah.
You want to show your screen, is it?
Yeah, just my screen there. Yeah, just whatever is on my screen. Just duplicate. Do I need to change the setting on my computer to do that? Or?
You did something to your notebook just now?
I probably did. Yes. Yeah.
Earlier it was showing. We could just do it if you can get it back.
Get it back, but I don't want to go back because I'm finished with that one here. So I think I have to duplicate the screen or something. Is that right? There's some kind of function I have to do. Who is it? Is any computer experts around here? Okay, computer expert. Okay, great. So if you just...
I'm not familiar with this model.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think that's right. If you just press that one here, it usually comes up. There we are. You have to use the keys over there, the mouse. Yeah, duplicate. Excellent. Sadhu, sadhu.
It's too big, right?
No, that's not good. I want that size. That's the size I want. Yeah. Actually, it's not big enough. I'm serious. This is the maximum size they allow. They wouldn't go any further than that. So I kind of... Anyway. They can see it. Okay, that's good. That's the advantage of large writing. Everyone can see it. And also, I don't want too much text at the same time because then you can't focus, So I've learned, I watched a YouTube video called Death by PowerPoint. And showed exactly what you're not supposed to do with PowerPoint. So anyway, this is not even PowerPoint, but whatever. So here is just very briefly, I'm just going to show you the idea of sense restraint. Yeah, sense restraint is a very important part of the guarding the doors of the senses, being the... So this is kind of one of the fundamental things, about this being the gatekeeper. Yeah. So just very briefly, just to have a look at this, to give an idea what is going on here. So how do you guard the sense doors? The word mendicant here is like a monastic. So when a mendicant sees a sight with their eyes, Yeah, so we're talking about the 6 senses again. Remember I was talking about the idea of how there are, what we're talking about is the senses. Yeah, this is what we are guarding. So the gate is the eye. That's where we get kind of the entry of the world into the mind, so to speak. Yeah. So the idea here is that you guard, or you see something with the eyes, whatever that might be. And then it goes on to the ears, and then it goes on to the tongue, goes on to the nose, the body touching, and then finally the mind. And in each of these cases, you don't get caught up in the features and details. Yeah, so you can maybe I'll talk a little bit about this, because I wasn't really going to talk too much about it, but just very briefly about what this means. So getting caught up, what does that mean? And what it means is that your mind lingers on something. Yeah. So you, for example, you see something that you like or dislike, and your mind doesn't let go. It stays with that thing. It kind of sticks in your mind. Yeah. If you're hungry and you walk past, a nice shop with some nice cakes on it, it lingers in your mind. Yeah. You can't get rid of it. Oh, that cake. Haven't got any money. I'm a monk. Oh no. Something like that. So it sticks in your mind. And of course the idea in Buddhism is not to have things stick in your mind, but to have mindfulness all the time, so that you kind of move on. Yeah, you go with the flow, as you might say. You don't get stuck in things in the world, because you want to be able to deal with the next thing that comes up. If you are stuck with something and then something else comes up, you deal with it in a bad way, because your mind is not mindful. You're not ready to deal with the next thing. So you want to be able to go with the flow. So you avoid getting caught up in the features and details. If the faculty of sight were left unrestrained, let's see, then bad, unwholesome qualities of desire and aversion would become overwhelming here. Yeah, so either you like something or you dislike it. And then these things become overwhelming. That's when you lose your mindfulness, when it becomes overwhelming. So to avoid the bad and the good, the desire and aversion to arise, you practice restraint. Protecting the faculty of sight and achieving its restraint. Yeah, so protecting here, this is the guard. Yeah, this is the gatekeeper, which actually protects, which is aware of what is going on. And then once you are aware, the second aspect then is to actually restrain. And that restraint happens through the wisdom power. So you are aware, and then the wisdom power kicks in and kind of shows you, stops you from kind of attaching to these things in the wrong way. There's 2 aspects to this whole idea of gatekeeper. There is the awareness, and then how you deal with things. Yeah? Awareness itself is not enough. You have to also be able to deal with it in the right way. And Ajahn Brahmali always tells the story, and I'm not sure many of you know this story really well, but it's a nice story that kind of gives you an idea of why this is a problem, if you just have awareness. And this is actually a very important point in Buddhism, because very often in the Buddhist teaching we talk about mindfulness, and you're told, be mindful, right? Whatever you do, be mindful, eat mindfully, do this mindfully, be angry mindfully. No. They don't actually say that. That's kind of the impression you get sometimes. Be mindful, and if you are mindful, that's kind of the be-all and end-all. And there is a very interesting reason why these teachings have come about in this way. And this is a very, you have to really know your sutta as well to understand these kind of reasons. The reason is because a lot of the things that you see when you practice Satipatthana, for example, the Satipatthana Sutta, one of the most important teachings of the Buddha, according to some, but actually it's just another teaching here. Satipatthana Sutta. Number 10, Majjhima Nikaya number 10. So according to this sutta, your activities in daily life, you're supposed to be mindful of your activities in daily life. And because that is in this sutta, then people take that to mean that you should be aware of everything you do. Eating, talking, speaking. I can't even speak anymore when I say do that. It kind of stops you from being able to talk. And so this is why, because Satipatthana practice is meditation, right? So if your daily activities are included in the Satipatthana Sutta, it means that you should be mindful in everything you do. That's really what it means. And this is why it is so interesting when we start reading these early suttas of Buddhism, and you start to look into them very carefully, what they actually mean. And there are some very interesting studies done on this. Then the question arises, well, does this part really belong in the Satipatthana Sutta? Sometimes there are little things have been added to the suttas, that kind of little corruptions that come into the suttas. And to understand this, what you have to do is you have to study these in great detail. You have to compare them across various languages and all of these kind of things. And one of the things that you start to realize is that this idea of being aware of your daily activities, actually it doesn't belong to the Satipatthana Sutta. It belongs to an earlier part of the path. Because otherwise it's like you have it in two places on the path, and nothing occurs in two places on the path. It either belongs early or it belongs late. It's like saying jhana is at the beginning and also at the end. That doesn't work, right? It has a certain place where it fits. And so the idea behind this thing of practicing being aware of the daily activities actually belongs earlier on the path. It is part of this thing we call something called sati sampajanya, which is very closely related to what we're seeing now, sense restraint. It's about avoiding defilements to arise in the mind. That's really what it is about. And so the purpose of the daily activities and being aware of what we're doing in daily life is really to avoid the arising of defilements. It is not so much just being aware of things, but it has a very specific purpose. The avoiding the arising of defilements in the mind. And this kind of changes the whole idea. Sati, mindfulness, has a very clear purpose suddenly. The purpose is to be aware, to avoid the mind kind of getting out of control. So this is how you achieve kind of the restraint here according to this particular thing. The mind is, you are aware, and then you use the kind of the wisdom power to stop the arising of defilements. You use this in daily life, and then you kind of get a nice and even mind as a consequence. I'll show you a nice sutta later on that shows you how the kind of evenness of the mind arises out of that awareness in daily life, or whatever it is. So this is just, I just wanted to show you this one. This is a very standard sutta. This is what you see everywhere. It's actually a very important part of the Dhamma. Whenever there is the gradual training that leads from the beginning of the path all the way to the end, you actually see this particular formula again and again. So, yes, please. It usually doesn't mean using willpower. It usually means using wisdom power. And this is what, it's not obvious when you see it here, because the word restraint in English actually usually means willpower, right? This is kind of the word restraint. If you talk about holding, we have something called a restraining order. It's like when someone is harassing you, you say to the police, keep them out of the way, right? The police are not going to say wisdom, wisdom. They're going to say force, force, right? That's kind of how the police work. So they're going to hold that person back. They restrain them. Or if you restrain a child, the child is about to run into the traffic. You don't say, be wise, child. You hold the child back because it's about to be run over by a car, right? So this is the idea of restraint, but this is why it is so important to have a kind of overall reading of the suttas, because it is that overall reading of the suttas that actually allows you to understand what restraint means in these contexts. And there are some contexts where the Buddha uses very strong words to the idea of overcoming defilements of the mind. He uses a word like anabbhavangameti and this kind of thing, which means like obliterate, to annihilate things, right? And when you hear a word like obliterate in English, it doesn't sound like wisdom power. It sounds like getting out the sledgehammer and kind of crushing things to smithereens. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like willpower to the highest extent, right? It really sounds like willpower. But then when the Buddha explains it, how do you actually obliterate something? The interesting thing is you cannot obliterate things with willpower. That is what is so interesting here. Because willpower, by definition, it holds things into place. Yeah? You are kind of suppressing it or holding it into place. But as soon as you let go, it tends to come back again. You haven't really dealt with the root of the problem. So willpower does not have the ability to obliterate or annihilate everything, whereas wisdom power has, because with wisdom power, you are turning your mind in a different direction. You are reminding yourself of the problem. Yeah? You're seeing, instead of looking at things in a way that gives rise to anger, you look at the thing in a different way. And instead of then having anger, you have compassion. This is what is so cool about this. And then once you have compassion, you look at things in a different way, then anger is incapable of arising. Yeah? So actually, if you want to obliterate something, willpower is wrong. Wisdom power is the right way. That is the only way you can actually obliterate something. So once you start to reflect on this, and once you start to see how the Buddha uses these things in the suttas, you see that actually using wisdom, using right view, that is the path to go. So we'll look at this later on, but it's good to have these things repeated, so ad nauseam, as they say. So if you start to feel a bit nauseous, you know why, because I'm saying things too many times. So anyway, so that is the kind of standard formula on sense restraint. Does anyone else want to say anything about this? Have I said anything sensible so far? Because I know that sometimes the way I speak is can be hard to follow. For those of you who have known me for a while, you probably understand what I'm saying because you have heard it so many times. But for those of you who are more new, it might not be so obvious at all. So sometimes I know what it's like. If you are new, you don't even know which question to ask. All you know, I'm confused, don't know what to say. And you know that feeling sometimes? Yeah, oh, okay. And you're kind of afraid of just saying, excuse me, I'm confused. And that's kind of not good enough as a question, you know. So, yes, please, Peter. Yeah.
Thanks for styling. I don't have a question. So this point about being caught up, that this extract is talking about, is that actually linked to wrong motivation or wrong intention in the second factor of the Eightfold Path?
Yes, it is. It is obviously linked to kind of underlying defilements, and when you have underlying defilements, then your intention is going to be wrong, and your motivation is going to be wrong as a consequence. So absolutely, yeah. So the defilements are there, and then the defilements are kind of driving that process, and so yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that's why, you know, and defilements they too are conditioned. Everything is conditioned. So then you have to change your attitude, and with the change of attitude, the defilements just disappear just like that, and then you're back in business again. Yeah, so that's a good point. So thanks for bringing that up. It's interesting how everything is related in this way, right? It all kind of comes together. So yeah. Please, yeah. So, sorry? Yeah. Oh, you're someone over here. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just that bit more on the restraint, wisdom, willpower, effort. Don't we need to put in effort?
Right, yeah.
Effort feel like restraint, willpower. When I get angry, the effort to stop.
Yeah. Good. Very, very good point. So this is, what does effort mean in this particular context? Yeah, if I say wisdom power rather than willpower, then what exactly does effort mean in the context, in that particular context? And so the effort can mean many different things, right? I mean, one way, willpower certainly is effort, because you are kind of really trying really hard. And it is actually mentioned in one of the suttas, and if we get to that sutta today, it will be a miracle. But anyway, it's there somewhere in there. And at the very end of that sutta, once you have tried all the wisdom, actually the willpower is actually